I'm going to give you a topic and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make some notes if you wish. Here's a pencil and some paper for making notes.
Thank you.
Here's your topic on this task card. I'd like you to describe a teacher who influenced you.
Okay, thank you.
Now, remember that you have 1 to 2 minutes for this. Don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
I'm going to talk about a teacher I had at primary school. This was when I was about 10 years old. He was a drama teacher, but he wasn't a permanent teacher at the school, and he didn't come every day. I think he visited just 1 day a week, and the other days he worked in other schools in the area. Well, I suppose he did. I never asked him about it. Anyway, I was quite a shy kid. I didn't have many friends, and I wasn't very confident about most things. We started drama classes when I was 10, and I absolutely loved it. Instead of being shy, I was much more confident, and I found I could make the other kids laugh. This drama teacher noticed that I was good at acting, and he encouraged me to take the lead role in the school play that year. At first, I didn't want to, because I felt too scared to perform in front of the whole school, but he more or less forced me to take the role. And he was right to do that, because I was a big success in the play, and then instead of being a bit of a nobody in the school, everybody knew who I was. I had many more friends, and I became less shy. I did some more acting afterwards at secondary school, but after a while I lost interest in it. The way that drama teacher influenced me was by helping me to increase my confidence and making me believe in myself more. I'm sure that helped me in later years.
Would you like to meet this teacher again now?
Well, he was pretty old then, probably just before retirement. I hope he's still alive. If he is, I'd like to thank him for forcing me to believe in myself and take that part in the play.
Can I have the task card back, please? Thank you. We've been talking about teachers and schools. I'd like to discuss with you 1 or 2 more general questions relating to this. Let's talk about the schools in your country. Do many of them have problems with children behaving badly in lessons?
Well, I don't know much about what happens in schools today, but a few years ago when I was at school, I'd say yes, there was a problem with some students behaving badly. It wasn't in all lessons, but in some lessons a lot of time was wasted with the teacher trying to get everybody to stop talking or sending messages on their mobile phones and start working.
Why do you think some children behave badly in lessons?
That's a good question. I think there are 2 reasons. Partly, I think it's because some of the children don't have enough respect for the teacher. Perhaps this is something their parents should have taught them. However, I think the main reason is often that the lessons aren't interesting enough. If the students don't respect the teacher, you have to ask why they don't respect him or her. In my experience, the teachers who gave interesting lessons didn't usually have many problems with discipline.
In your country, do you think most pupils find the school subjects interesting?
Well, again, I think there are 2 points to make here. One is that it depends on the students. For example, some kids find maths fascinating, others find it really boring. The other point, though, is that it can depend on the teacher. A good teacher can make a boring subject interesting, and vice versa. It's up to the teacher to make the pupils interested in the subject.
Have schools in your country changed since you were at school?
I haven't really thought about that. As I said, I don't know much about schools today. I imagine they've changed in some ways. For example, when I was at school, quite a lot of students had mobile phones with them all the time, but now I expect almost all of them do. Or perhaps none of them does. I think I heard that mobile phones have been completely banned in some schools. I expect there are more computers now too. At my primary school, there were about 200 children and one computer room with about 10 computers. I'm sure there are more than that now.
Do you think children today are different to children when you were young?
Well, I do know something about this. My sister has twins aged 11. I meet them and their friends quite often, and they seem a bit different to the 11-year-olds I remember. Although they're very similar in many ways, they seem a little bit more confident, and they also seem to know more about the news and current affairs. When I was 11, I don't think I knew much at all about the news, but they seem to know quite a lot, more than I do sometimes.
Thank you very much. That's the end of the speaking test.
I'm going to give you a topic, and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make some notes if you wish. Here's a pencil and some paper for making notes.
Thanks.
Here's your topic on this task card. I'd like you to describe a city you have visited.
Okay, thank you.
Now, remember that you have 1 to 2 minutes for this. Don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
I don't have a lot of experience of visiting other cities. I live in Rome, which of course is a very big city, and when I go on vacation with my family, we prefer to get away from the city and go to the beach or visit the countryside. So, I'm going to talk about a very small city in the south of Italy called Lecce. It seems more like a town, really, but technically it's a city because it's the administrative capital of the region. I don't think it's well known outside Italy. I went there because 2 years ago my family had a beach holiday about 20 kilometers away, and we went into Lecce to go to restaurants there. I remember it well because we went there 5 or 6 times. When you drive through the outskirts, it really doesn't appear to be a very interesting place. I'm not saying it's unpleasant, but there are lots of very ordinary apartment blocks and a lot of traffic congestion. However, when you actually get to the center and find somewhere to park, it's very nice. There are several beautiful old churches, and the historic center is surprisingly pleasant. Most of the shops seem quite old-fashioned. Some of them give the impression that nothing has changed since the 1950s. The whole place feels very relaxed, and the local people are extremely friendly. You get the feeling that they're happy living there and are proud of their city. I liked it very much.
Would you like to live there?
Yes, I would. I think I'd be very happy there.
Do you think you will visit Lecce again?
I'd like to. Perhaps we'll have another summer holiday in that area sometime soon.
It sounds a nice place. Now, can I have the task card back, please? Thank you. We've been talking about towns and cities. I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions relating to this. Let's talk about living in cities and the countryside. Do you think life is better in the city or in the countryside?
I suppose it depends on the person. In many ways, life is easier in the countryside. By that, I mean that there's more space, no crowds, and it's usually cheaper to live. On the other hand, it can be a lot less interesting. Most cultural activity goes on in cities. Personally, I wouldn't want to live outside a city, but I've lived in Rome all my life. I imagine that if I'd lived all my life in a small village, I probably wouldn't want to live in a city.
In many countries, cities are growing fast. Why do you think this is?
I'm not sure. Perhaps it's because in some countries the standard of living in the countryside is very low, and life for a lot of people is just about growing enough food to live. I guess many people in that situation, A, get bored, and B, hope to find a higher standard of living in the city.
What problems can rapidly expanding cities have?
Let me think. Well, when cities expand very rapidly, it's often without any control over how they develop. In other words, they become megacities with huge shantytowns and no proper, infrastructure for millions of people. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't find the better life they were hoping for and can end up in an even worse situation. This is probably one of the biggest problems we face today.
Some cities receive millions of visitors. What problems can this cause?
Well, this is an entirely different problem, and I know a lot more about this because I live in Rome. If you go into the historic center on a Saturday in the summer, it can seem that you're the only local inhabitant there. The problem is that cities with too many visitors can lose their original character. Although, of course, it's not a problem for people who own restaurants and shops in the historic center. To put it another way, tourism supports a lot of people financially.
What can be done to ensure tourism doesn't cause too many problems?
That's not an easy question to answer. If you limit tourist numbers, you also limit the benefits to the local economy. And how do you limit visitor numbers? You can't put a wall around the city. If the tourist board in my city tried harder to promote the less famous parts of the city, the visitors might spread out. There are some beautiful areas outside the center, with some great historic monuments, but very few tourists go there, because they're all in the most famous places in the center.
Thank you very much. That's the end of the speaking test.